Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this session today. A very warm welcome to all of you. My name is Abhilasha. I am a leadership and life coach, and I am your host for this session. So let's turn off all distractions to fully enjoy this really power-packed conversation that's lined up today. Let me start with introducing our panelists. Our first panelist comes with over 3.5 decades of governance experience at local, state, and national levels. From Indian Police Service 1983 Odisha and Indian Administrative Service 1985 Tamil Nadu. Exposure to working multilateral agencies at the international level. Currently, he is the Managing Director, Chennai International Center, member of Conciliation and Settlement Committee, Ministry of Shipping, Government of India, and also an independent board member with TVS Delphi. In the past, he has been members of the International Technical Advisory Board for Myanmar Census, served on UN Committee of Experts on Census, served as a member of several technical committees at national level on GST, among many others. So please welcome Dr. Chandramouli, sir. So welcome, and it's a pleasure to have you with us today. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Bala. So Dr. Bala comes with over 3 decades in leadership positions in the public governance sphere as a member of Indian Administrative Service, Bihar cadre. He comes with deep experience in policy implementation, policy formulation, HRD with special focus on capacity building. He donned multiple hats during his career. To name a few, he was the Special Secretary to the President of India, Principal Secretary in the Department of Science and Technology, Vice Chancellor of Nalanda Open University, and Maulana Mazharul Haq Arabic and Persian University in Bihar. He also served on the Special Office of the National Games 2002. He is an MA and MPhil from JNU and a PhD from Georgia State University, USA. Sir, welcome, and it's a pleasure to have you with us today for this conversation.
Thank you, Abhilasha. Thank you.
Our next panelist is Shannon. So Shannon Cooper is a leadership and management facilitator known for getting bold results. Starting his career as a chemical engineer, Shannon left the lab over 15 years ago when he discovered that blending logic and inspiration could add up to some pretty powerful business alchemy. Shannon has worked extensively with different sectors, to name a few: manufacturing, agriculture, education and training, government, healthcare and social assistance, etc. He is regularly called upon by public organizations, including the LWP, WorkSafe Victoria, Australian Taxation Office, etc., and where he brings his acumen to help leadership growth and drive new levels of agility and strategic flexibility. Shannon comes with huge experience in the area of leadership development and facilitation, and a lot of it with the public sector enterprises in Australia. Shannon, welcome to the session, and so good to have you here with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Abhilasha. Thank you. Welcome.
Last but not the least, CN, who is our moderator for the session today. He is the past president of the ICF Mumbai Charter Chapter, a PCC coach. He has over 2,500 hours of experience as a leadership and transformation coach, working with leaders across geographies and industries at senior levels. With over 40 years of experience in the industry and board-level responsibilities, he has spearheaded change and grown businesses in a disruptive world. A keen wildlife photographer sees the world around him with many lenses, enjoying the perfection and the wonder that changing perspectives always bring up. Please welcome CN Murthy. CN, a very warm welcome to you. And now I will turn the session over to you.
Thank you, Abhilasha. Thank you very much for those glowing words. I think all of us are truly indebted for the lovely introduction that you gave all of us. And, as for me, being a moderator of a panel with luminaries like Dr. Chandramouli, Dr. Bala, and Shannon from Australia is quite an honor for me. And I'm a passionate coach. Up when I retired in 2011 from industry, and I moved from being an engineer working with products and machinery and plants and systems and what have you, and got into that area of engineering the brain, the mind, and trying to get to know the answer to the question, who am I? I think it was a landmark decision that I had taken, and there was so much more. Just a little while ago, you said every day you wake up and you discover how little you know. And so it is with that spirit and with that feeling within me that there is so much to learn and so much to know from all on the panel that I'm now getting on to being the moderator for this session. Time is very limited, I do realize. About 30, 40 minutes of a conversation is very short for a topic such as trying to discover how coaching can be an enabler for inclusive management in the public sector. But let's see, let's do the best we can and dive right in, shall we? Okay, so let me just sort of lead into the discussion with a few words. In all the years that I've spent as a professional in organizations, I discovered one thing, that leaders grow in their careers and they create experiences for themselves that tells them that they need to have knowledge to acquire. They need knowledge, they need to acquire skills, and they need to build the competency which tells them what skill to use at what time. Now, this is what I chased for nearly 40 years as a leader. It's when I retired and got into coaching that I discovered that, there was something, that there was truth in what was there at the back of my mind. I was missing something. I was finding it extremely difficult to create a fast, changing, responding, agile system within me. I could not pivot, I could not swivel, and I could not handle chaos in a changing world. And I was trying, and I'd go in for workshops, I would go in for training, and I'd come out saying, yeah, there were such wow moments in those training sessions. But then I discovered that, there was something that cannot be taught by reading books. We cannot learn. It cannot, multiple hours of practice don't teach us this even. And coaching has taught me that this is because the most important tool or instrument that we bring into our leadership is ourselves. And this instrument of the self needs constant attention. We need to be able to pause, reflect, look at ourselves, and in short, we just need constant attention, development, and we need to repair ourselves. We need to find ourselves in that space to be the leaders that we want to be. There's a world of a difference between being Murthy the leader and the leader Murthy. Today, I say there's a world of a difference between being Murthy the coach and Coach Murthy. And this is what I learned. So it was not skills, it was not learning, it was not competency. It was my capacity to be a leader. So here's my question to let me start with Dr. Bala Prasad. Okay. Tell me, Bala, is this a realization that you had while working in the civil service too?
Once again, hi everybody. And the question that you raise is very, very crucial. I mean, that question can be answered not only by a public sector executive, a civil servant, or anyone in this world, I think, has to answer the question you raised. But in any case, we limit ourselves to how can we look at that as an enabler in the public sector. There's some things that people need to understand about the public sector. Though everyone knows how governments work, there may not be enough information or enough finer points that miss people usually. So you go back to the basic fundamental definition of public administration, which is getting work done. So as a civil servant, I'm there to deliver. I've been trained, I've been paid to deliver. So that is a given. And the other thing is, again, a given situation is most of us in the services that we join are always in leadership positions. The other side of it is that the flop side is that, at least in the initial years, there's very little reflection going on within oneself. I can speak for myself. I don't know if I can speak for others, but I can speak for myself because it's a question of joining a new environment, a new service, and trying to learn on the go. And the funny thing is that learning never ended. The way we keep changing jobs every 2-3 years, we are on a learning curve forever. And when I say learning curve, it is not only domain knowledge, Every job comes with a different domain expertise, different skill set, and also different ethos. Have you guys ever wondered why the mindset of a police officer is different from that of a welfare officer? That is the nature of the job. So when you shift jobs, your outlook also needs to change. Now, how well we adapt to this, how well we pick it up, that is the challenge. And that is where I think what you said about learning, reflecting, and then learning to change, or rather learning to learn, comes in. Does it make any sense? Sian?
Yeah,
does it
sure.
make sense? Do I answer your question?
It does. It does. So let me ask Dr. Chandramouli this question. During your time as a senior leader, heading heavy responsibilities in an IS role, were there times when you found it necessary to just stop for a moment and get in touch with yourself to know, what was happening within you that you needed to be aware of, to be able to bring yourself out there to be the best version of yourself? Was it easy for you?
It was never easy. Let me go back to, when we start our service. You see, we are some 20, 23, 25-year-olds being parachuted into a leadership position where it's an established system. You have to go in and assert your leadership immediately. And it's quite lonely there because we start at the head of a subdivision. And as a head of a subdivision, people look up to you. So you are not only a leader, but you have to also instill leadership in the people whom you lead. And there you don't have the system in government of going out and asking people, except a few mentors within the service. You don't have the liberty of going out and asking others to coach you. And that is when you feel, this is most required. So you go by trial and error, you make a few mistakes, you succeed, you don't succeed. That's, I would say, providence. But definitely a organized system of mentoring or coaching at that stage, especially at a younger age when you are just out of university and you've been trained, no doubt, for about 2 years in the academy and things like that. But when you have to face real life situations, especially in very difficult circumstances, where probably the people are new, the circumstances are new, sometimes the language is new for us, and to take up leadership at that kind of a young age is a real challenge. As you grow in the service, your experience comes to the fore, and then you acquire the domain knowledge, as Bala very rightly put it. We have to keep on acquiring that domain knowledge in every position that we occupy. And along with that, we go through bouts of training, which gives us the functional and the behavioral aspects of competencies. But definitely this system of, someone who has been there, who has done that, who has seen such situations before, if they could bring that perspective to those young civil servants who are there facing the real world, I think it would have made a hell of a difference to have bettered our output.
Thank you, Chandra. Shannon, let me just turn to you now. How important is this focus on building the capacity of individuals who hold leadership positions? How important is it in the Australian public service?
Yeah, and it's extraordinarily important part of our leadership culture and our culture within the public service. As Dr. Bala pointed out, that there's pressure on those individuals to deliver. And that pressure comes from multiple different angles, from a community level to a broader social level, to a political level, and a business level. So there's multiple layers of that pressure. And you add into that with the broad complexity of the environments where we work, and the volatility that we're experiencing globally at the moment. I think one of in order to respond to that pressure, one almost has a choice to make. We can try and do it all. we can try and solve all of the problems or lean into all of the challenges. But ultimately, that's not sustainable. And it also doesn't lead to the best solutions or the better solutions in response to many of these challenges. So, to tap into the knowledge and the diversity of the people around us, or even just to have someone who can challenge us to think a little bit differently, to look at issues from different perspectives, to question our own assumptions and our own viewpoints and our own judgments, is an enormously powerful part of the role of a leader within the public service here in Australia, to help us develop and nurture the better solutions, rather than just the solution that's made under extraordinary amount of pressure or an extraordinary amount of feeling that because I am in a leadership role, I have to wear the burden of being able to do that on my own. So it's about perspective, it's about judgment, but it's also about helping us develop I suppose the better solution. Of course, we don't always get it right. That's not that'd be foolish for me to say that, but I think that it certainly stops some of that siloed thinking that can often happen.
Thank you, Shannon. I just want to share a little bit about my experience out here while being a leader in, and let's call it the private sector, in industry and elsewhere. One of the things that I had found was that one builds a phenomenal reliance on what I know. I even know what I do not know. And I over the years, one develops that capability to discover what it is that is missing in me in terms of knowledge, in terms of skills. And well, one invests a lot of time in that. But one of the things that I have found when I was a leader myself, and today when I'm a coach working with very senior leaders in the private sector, one of the things that I find is that it is not what I know and do not know that helps me to be the leader that is required of me. What one finds is that it is the emotions that come into me, my fears. And Patanjali, who's in the Vedic science, brings out the 5 kleshas so beautifully. He says there could be 5 things that keep you back from really achieving what you want to be. The first is knowledge, but the second is fear. The third is things that you are attached to. The fourth is aversions. And the fifth is ego. And when we are talking about my fears, my attractions, my aversions, and my ego, it is you cannot be taught this. You cannot discover this. Now, my question, which I will leave open to all the panelists, and anyone can take this up for a moment. Okay, what do these thoughts that are there in me that I've just expressed bring up for you when we are talking about coaching as an enabler for inclusive management?
If I may just talk a little bit to the fifth dimension there that you mentioned there, Sam, which is around ego. And I always reflect on a person's ego, which is, of course, there's a level of attachment to a perspective or a belief. And sometimes we judge people or assume people to have big egos. I actually enjoy working with and coaching people with big egos because they have a good level of confidence. There is a subtle difference, though. I don't think it's about the size of the ego. I think it's about the strength of one's ego. And you can have a big ego, a great deal of confidence, but are you prepared to be somewhat malleable within that view? Are you prepared to take on different perspectives and ideas? And are you prepared to still maintain that stance of confidence in what you believe or what you think to be true or a decision that you make? But are you prepared to be judged around that? So I always think about ego, not so much of the size, but in terms of the strength of one's ego. And it's the strength that is, to me, that's the thing that is nice to be malleable a little, rather than a strong ego, because I think a strong ego is good for a leader to have.
True. Chandra or Bala, any comments on this?
Yeah, actually, all the 5 elements that you talked about, all of us go into the field with fair amounts of each of this. We have the fear, we have the aversions, we have all that you mentioned. We have egos too. And as a leader over there, any sign of weakness is assumed by us as being fatal, right? So we try to cover up all these elements that are within us, and we know that we are being plagued by these aversions and the fears and things like that. But we often hide it and either take to bluster or actually, some other strategy to cover up these weaknesses. And that is where strategies to channelize all these into constructive or creative avenues to enhance the leadership potential. I mean, it is taken by many of us that, listening to others is a weakness. You go with an attitude of that you know it all, that you've been placed in that superior position of leadership, and therefore you are the one who is going to guide the entire team and not vice versa. And often we have found that it is opposite. The more you listen, the more you learn, and more you enhance your own leadership capabilities, and you're able to deliver better. You take that is the theme of inclusive management that we have chosen today. And I would say that is exactly what makes a successful leader and sets him apart or her apart from the rest of the also rans. I think this ability to listen and include different shades of opinion is very much a part of effective leadership, which one needs to be, trained to accept and also channelize when one is put into a leadership position.
Sure.
Yes, and can I?
Please do. Go
You
ahead.
start off by the I know syndrome, That's a very common syndrome at all leadership levels, public, private, you name it. That is actually comes with the job, I think. Since leadership entails decision making and decision taking, willy-nilly you get into that I know it all. So all of them become I specialists. I am this. You talk to anyone in leadership position, they start off, I did that when I was this, when I was that. But they hardly realize that whatever they did or whatever we did when we were in whatever position we were in, it was not a singular effort. It was collaborative. It was a collective effort, right from the lowest rank to the highest signature that will be mine in that position. But it takes time, wisdom, and maybe age to realize that. Like Chandramouli was saying, when you land up, and we all land up in leadership positions at a very young age, and you have a whole lot of people saying, oh, sir, you are the greatest. There's no one in like you. There's been no one like you. There will be no one like you. Funny thing, there'll be a huge meeting and you will be the youngest guy, but you will be looked up to the most. So you, as an individual, it certainly called for soul searching for me. What am I doing? There's so many gray-haired guys here and I'm a young rookie, 25-year-old. So at times the I know it all does seep in, because that is the atmosphere you're in. But then again, there are always people who may sometimes hit you a sobering blow that it's not all. You have enough of the media and the press to say, this guy messed up. But again, coming back to the question that you raised, yes, all of us do have our own weaknesses. We do have our weaknesses, and I think most of us do realize that these weaknesses do hamper our ability to deliver, our ability to do work, our ability to carry a team forward. My experience as Secretary Agriculture, I thought I was a big shot, a hot chap, able to do a lot of work. But then a couple of meetings, I realized my officers knew so much of the subject and they knew how to go about it, that it just needed me to organize who does what among them, and they did the job. Of course, I take credit, but on paper, since I was leading the team, I take credit, but credit is due to all of them. So coming back, yes, collaborative management does require soul searching. You have to understand your own strength as well as your weakness. In fact, what you said was to realize oneself, know your own strength is the biggest strength. To know your own weakness is also your strength, so that you can use those to deliver, to do better. I'm sticking only to the administration part of it.
Beautiful. Dr. Bala, Dr. Chandramouli, it's quite obvious that you had an intrinsic ability to soul search, to reflect, and to discover that which in you that would help you, evolve to being the better version of yourselves. Okay, but here is my question. Soul searching requires reflection. And reflecting to develop insights about yourself is something that we all believe we can do, but there's a body of research which says that's probably the most difficult thing to do. And it is for this purpose of, pausing, looking inwards, reflecting, and discovering that you are indeed whole, complete, and perfect, and don't need to fall prey to the winds of adversity around you. That is so, so important for leaders in chaotic times. And that is where I believe coaching comes in. Shannon, what would your comment be about that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think one of the you talk about that notion of reflection and self-reflection and taking the time to do that. And one is that these very busy leaders very rarely have the time or create the time or think that it's significantly important enough to curate the time to be able to do it. Then the next challenge comes is, well, I do have the time, but how do I do it? It's easy to say, be more reflective, but what does that look like? And this is where I think coaching can be so magnificent, because a great coach will be able to come from a place of intention to serve and to help and to support the person that they're coaching, but also has hopefully a wonderful ability to stay in a place of curiosity and ask deeply provocative and thoughtful questions of the person that they're coaching. In other words, that intention combined with that skill and those questions enable the reflective practice that you talk about and can guide them along that way, but also teach them potentially how to do it themselves as well by coaching themselves. So yeah, I agree. I think we all agree that some of us have that innate ability. Many of us, particularly if we are young, new to leadership, a lot of complexity going on. Where do we find the time? And even if we do, how do we do it? And a coach can be a great enabler. Coaching can be a great enabler of those things.
Thank you. I've been trying within the Indian, arena to actually get people to appreciate and recognize the power that coaching can play in this area of self-reflection, soul-searching, and so on. I think over the years, there's a general acceptance that, yes, coaching does really provide a great support to leaders in industry and in private sector. But when it comes to all our efforts, both as a professional body like ICF or individual coaches, when one has tried to work with leaders in the public sector or administrators in the public sector to try and get them to understand how coaching can play a remarkable role in getting performance excellence up amongst leaders even, one has felt that there is a big divide and there is a chasm that needs to be bridged before coaching as a practice gets adopted in public service. There seems to be, it's like there is no connection between coaches and the thinkers, the past that be in public service. There is a lack of trust. And I'm also sensing that there is a lack of curiosity to understand the other's point of view. I think about it, and in the spirit of soul searching and reflection, I come up with a thought. I admit that we as coaches are probably guilty of being captive with our own thoughts, our own stories, and our own emotions about the greatness of coaching. And I also see that there is a parallel process in play in which we as coaches want the leadership in the civil sector to interrupt their narrative, get out of their biases and prejudices about coaching. And yet, we are not willing to let go of our own biases and prejudices. And there is something that is keeping both sides from creating that space of trust and relationships. And that's my own self-reflection. So here's the big one for the panel. How do we move forward? So, Dr. Bala, would you?
Sure.
This first.
In fact, questions you raised are very, very serious, very, very important. One, why is the public sector or government sector or the civil servants, why are they not too receptive, right? A couple of reasons, some good, some bad. There are some protocols, there are some codes of conduct for us which prevent us from reaching out to any outsider and take the help of any outsider. It will be violative of maybe an Official Secrets Act. Things may be so complicated that you just can't share information with others. At another level, the law, the statute empowers or designates you as the sole deciding official, and that also puts pressure on you. You can't. For example, I'll give you an example. There was a particular election. I was the returning officer, and there was the issue of a particular candidate having to be disqualified. Now, I was a young fellow. I had no clue how to go about it. The law was there. People are there. There are lawyers arguing. I would have loved to have someone hold my hand and guide me through the process. But no, the law said you and you alone will decide. You can take advice from anyone, but you have to decide. Let me give you another example. Law and order is a basic fundamental regulatory duty of, let us say, a young officer like Chandramouli and I were, and we are about 30 years younger. In a law and order situation, not even your boss can tell you what to do. You are the officer on the duty, on the ground, and no one else but you will decide. So the limited point is sometimes statutes, acts, and Official Secrets Act, etc., prevent you from reaching out. The other thing is, other issue, why people don't reach out to coaches and external sources is that not a lot of them have an idea of what we do or how we do them. Unlike the private sector, ends alone will not justify means. We are guided by means also. We are liable for every infraction of a process. So it is just not that we have a goal in front of us and all we need to do is go ahead and get that. No wonder, you listen to a lot of people saying no one ever got punished for not doing anything. That's because, the process took over. So these are some reasons I'm saying why people don't reach out. And it's pretty normal to say that coaches or people outside the government system are not fully versed with the kind of not pressures, but the nitty-gritty of how we work. Now, the other side, if coaches, if other private professionals had a better understanding of our work or the way government officers work, maybe they would approach the thing differently. Now, let me again relate it to my own thing. I only see, did I ever need a coach in my entire career? Well, as long as I was in the service, maybe I never asked this question, but if I ask myself today, I said, sure, I do need it. But I'll go back and do the exactly same thing I did 35 years ago, maybe better. Maybe in a way someone will tell me how to go about it in a better message, in a better manner. Develop more soft skills. Develop better ways to deal with adverse situations. These things, I would definitely welcome them. So these two issues and how to bridge this gap, I think soft skills is one area where, I'm sorry, I'm going into issues. I'm mixing up coaching with training and tutoring and mentoring and consulting.
But that's
But
okay.
I'm looking at it as an external resource to help civil servants do their job better. Okay, so there are areas. You also mentioned leadership being a very lonely thing. Yes, leadership is a very lonely thing when you're alone and you have to decide. And you know something that you decide will impact a lot of people, thousands of them. Now just imagine a commissioner of police deciding to impose curfew in a city. He has to think 1,000 times, but the order will be his. So things like that. To cut a long story short, soft skills, maybe some not domain expertise, but some areas where civil servants normally do not do well, that is change management. These areas can be the starting point of a coaching entry. And then thereafter, people realize, so once you prove the utility of this to some, like doing is believing, others also tend to join in. My 2 cents.
Thank you. Dr. Chandramouli, would you take in just a couple of minutes, because I do realize that we are running short of time. In just a couple of minutes, could you just share with any thoughts that come in addition to what Bala just said?
Yeah, Bala has really summed up the whole situation well. But I would just add that it is not that we do not seek domain expertise when we don't have it. I mean, that is where the distinction between consultancy, coaching, management consultancy. Now we have consultants in the government which are dime a dozen who are offering their domain expertise where the government lacks it. It's only in the area of leadership where you say self-reflection and a guided kind of a self-reflection to identify the dark spots in a leader's personality, or the kind of hidden areas which could be unlocked by proper guidance. I think in those areas we do have a need for external advice or external expertise to come in. But as far as domains are concerned, we now have even lateral entrance into the government, which come from the domain. For example, civil aviation, or it is shipping. We do get experts in from the external market and help them supplement the governmental efforts. But as far as this mind space development, the leadership, the soft development of the unleashing the potential which is locked, I think that we have not reached out. And some of the impediments, as Bala has very rightly said, are the rules and regulatory frameworks that are in place where you are not expected in the system to reach out to people, because it would either be a revelation of something which was secret, or in the government there are other regulations which are considered unbecoming of an officer. So these are some vague terms which are still, we have a colonial hangover. Anything could be construed as an act which is unbecoming of a public servant. Now, this is a very, very dangerous thing which can include anything, including talking to the general public of what you're doing officially. So these need to change. A more liberal atmosphere is coming in with the new approach to building capacities for every role, rather than every, just at different times of your career, you were given some training and some behavioral inputs were given to you in those stages. But now it's changing, where we are saying that there would be a capacity building for every role that a civil servant has to play. And that would also include not only the domain expertise that is required, but also the functional and the behavioral expertise that one is supposed to have. So building up the emotional quotient of the officer, building up the leadership skills, I think these are areas where it's opening up. And I do see a potential for coaches to come in and lend their professional expertise in this.
Thank you, Chandra. Shannon, your reflections about the secrecy and the need and the systemic issues that hold the, being even considering coaching. How has this been viewed and handled in public sector elsewhere?
Yeah, thank you. And just to add there to what Drs. Bala and Chandramouli mentioned there, I agree. And one of the I think things for us as coaches and as professionals to think about how we move forward. And I think about some of those issues and challenges that still exist within pockets of the public service here, both federally and at a state level in Australia, is to challenge us to think about our own mindsets and our approaches with these the clients and the people that we want to serve and the organisations that we want to work with. And one of the things that I think is worth us reflecting on is sometimes we assume that, or we approach a coaching relationship from the perspective as, well, we're coaches, people should trust us. And we may have a viewpoint where, even though there might be some elements that are secretive or unbecoming, as Dr. Chandramouli mentioned, is that, well, we're coaches, you can trust us and share that stuff with us, and we'll help you and we'll support you. And we're not here to undermine your decision-making or authority. We're not here to undermine your leadership or the esteem in which you're held. We're actually here to assist you, to help you elevate that. Of course, now as coaches, we have this mindset. And sometimes we show up just assuming that people will trust us to deliver upon that intention. However, I think what we need to understand is something that I think is really important, and something that I try to do in my practice with my clients, is that we should never forget that trustworthiness comes before trust. Trustworthiness before trust. So as coaches and as professionals, we need to demonstrate to these leaders and these organizations and these agencies that we are indeed trustworthy, and that we, in other words, and what is the evidence that we are using to assist them with that? Are we giving them usable evidence that they can trust us, that they can share with us information that might be somewhat sensitive, but know that we're going to use that information to assist them to unpack it, to make decisions, to make judgments, to elevate and accelerate their leadership journey. And we can only do that one conversation at a time. One conversation at a time. And I think sometimes we assume, oh, look, we're coaches, trust us, we'll help, we'll assist, and everyone should get on board our bus. And I think another one of those ways forward is to think on that level as well, is how are we showing up and what is the mindset that we're bringing to these relationships?
Beautiful. So Abhilash, I'm glad you came in, and thank you so much, Shannon, for those words. Abhilasha, it's time to now hear the voice of the audience, right?
Absolutely.
So
we could go on with this conversation. We were all just warming up, right? So there are a couple of questions. Let me take them one by one. So there's a question from Raghunandan. He's saying, as we know, it's the role and responsibility of an individual in the government sector which makes the difference in handling their capability and capacity of managing things. How can we embody coaching mindset among the bureaucrats?
A beautiful question. Bala or Chandra?
Dr. Chandramouli?
Yeah, I would start with creating a policy environment on this. Today, as Bala pointed out, and I also referred to, the environment is towards secrecy. It's outdated, but today there's still the colonial hangover of official secrets and secrecy and conduct. These are vestiges of the past which need to go. So the policy environment has to encourage this kind of development. And I think we are moving in the right direction with the Mission Karmayogi, where behavioral inputs are given equal importance as the domain and functional inputs. So I think this is something which is opening up, and we need to see how to position as Shannon very rightly pointed out, that we have to prove that, this what's is said, there's a confidentiality, a patient doctor kind of a relationship, or a lawyer client relationship, where the confidentiality will be maintained. And there will have to be some sort of a clearance of the coach for the various levels. And I think that is where we work on the policy. Today, the policy doesn't exist.
Sure.
Dr. Bala, would you like to add anything?
Yes, Abhilasha. I have two very brief points to make. One, from the coaching professionals themselves, there is a need to make their activity better known. I've been in government for a long time, and I confess that I don't know a lot about how coaching professionals do their job and how they can be of any assistance. So I'm being frank. So I didn't know. It's now only through this conclave that I've come to know about a whole lot of resources that are available, which would have been of great help. The second thing, as I want to add to what Chandramouli said, I would certainly advise, urge, and encourage all coaching professionals to have a look at the Mission Karmayogi document on the Department of Personnel and Training website, and see how they can contribute. It's a very open system, and I'm sure if they can go through it and understand how simple it is, they can build on their strengths and be of use.
Thank you.
Shannon, from your perspective, I'm going to, ask the next question pointed towards you. There's a question from Akshat which says, I see a lot of civil servants and government executives struggle in making well-intentioned decisions due to political pressures. How can the coaching industry help them there? In the context of where you come from, how does this play out? And how can coaching play a role?
One of the key aspects often as coaches when those decisions are being made, and there is pressure and sometimes competing pressures from different angles and different lobby groups, different stakeholders and different pressure points, is the role of a coach there is to help unravel some of that complexity a little bit and to help the leader make sense of, reason with, apply their own judgment, as well as apply a level of objectivity. And of course, we do that through the art of questioning, by encouraging that critical thinking, or finding the balance between the head and the heart, as it were. And it's not our role, of course, as coaches to make that decision or even to influence that decision. But what we can do is, through a coaching approach, help that leader feel more comfortable and confident in the final decision that they make. And sometimes that level of confidence comes with them at least being able to articulate the rationale behind the decision that they have arrived at. And often it's the coach that can help them unpack or uncover what that rationale is through asking really good questions. And I think that's where a coach can assist in that context.
Dr. Chandra, if you were to look at it from Indian context, what would your response be to this question?
See, there are, one has to understand the role of a public servant versus the role of an elected representative. Now, each one has to play their own parts. And what you call as pressure often is the pressure on the political executive, most of the time, to deliver to their constituents. It is the job of the public servant to really put forth or unpack all these ideas, as Shannon put it, before the political executive. And then finally, if you have done your job in presenting all the pros and the cons of a particular situation, and a decision is taken, it is up to the public servant to execute those decisions. You don't have the independence or You don't have the right to really decide once the decision has been taken at the right levels and proper decision has been taken. You will have to carry out, and therefore there you cannot stand up and say no, I will not carry it out because I don't agree with what you have taken as a decision. So coaching basically allows you to stand up and ask those questions and put it in the right perspective before the decision makers, who are the elected representatives. And after that decision has been taken, your right to dissent really disappears, and you have to really carry it out in the best possible manner.
Very well said. Thank you. Dr. Bala, would you like to add anything there, or should we go to the next question?
We can. I think let's go to the next question. You don't have a lot of time.
Absolutely. So this question from Anita, she's saying, do we know if there is an appetite for coaching in the bureaucratic environment for our civil servants? So what would your response be, Dr. Bala, to that question?
So as I said, there is scope for it, plenty of it. The problem, however, lies in bridging that initial hesitation. And once we get successful examples of how coaching professionals have changed, have improved, have dramatically magnified results, I think there is it will follow through. And as we said, I would seriously encourage these professionals to definitely have a look at the Karma Yogi website.
Great. Thank you so much. I think a lot of us are going to go back and look at that website. Sin, should I go ahead and then close the session on your behalf? All right. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you, Dr. Chandra, Dr. Bala, Shannon, and Cian for being here and sharing all your insights with us. I know the time was less and we could have gone on for a couple hours more just to get all the nuggets from all of you. But thank you so much on behalf of everybody for taking the time out and being with us today. We've been able to answer most of the questions. I know there's a couple questions which got missed out, but we'll try and see how we can answer those. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you. Really enjoyed the session.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Chandra. Thank you, Dr. Bala. Thank you, Shannon.